negative team was that they seem to hang their case on two premises. One, if you take a snapshot of a country or a nation before a democracy and decide that there are fundamental disagreements, fundamental tensions, then you should never ever try to resolve those things. Back off. Like that, talking to each other could never ever resolve differences. The second thing they want to rest their hinges on is that if a democracy can't function absolutely perfectly with perfect representation, then it should also never be tried. We have problems with both of these premises, as it would seem to justify the abolition of all democracies on earth and never ever trying to create new ones. As Churchill said, democracy is like the shittest form of government, but it's also the shittest, least shittest one, or whatever it is. And we're going to follow that principle if it'll learn. Because your comparative is a monarchy, guys, and it prevents many of the same harms which you guys say is under our side of the house. So I have 3 points of summary. 1, on the functioning of democracy. 2, on security. 3, on movement. On the first one, the functioning of democracies. First thing they said, representation isn't perfect. I would invite the negative team to point me to one democracy in the world where representation is perfect. That is not a justification to give up on it or to not start it. That is a justification to mitigate that representational flaws. And we did. We had a second house of review which had to aid in spatial representation. You want to know how the humans might find out why the ants value wood? When the ants in the upper house say, hey guys, this is why we value these particular trees. They've been enchanted with this particular water. Please stop cutting them down. Please cut down the lifeless ones over here. A tree is a tree to a human until they enlighten to that perspective. That is what a democracy brings. Secondly, they say, what if they have an issue with the system itself? Then we would suggest that, like many Americans have an issue with their system at the moment, they form a voting bloc around a candidate proposing to change that system. Who can run, if, according to you guys, that lots of species will share this concern, which means that they can band together. And we think that humans aren't sadistic bastards out there maintaining a fundamentally unequal system. If there's a good case to be made that it would be equal but fair under a different way. You didn't give us any reason as to why humans would be fundamentally opposed to ceding certain amounts of power, right? If a good case is made. Secondly, they said, the races won't cooperate, as if this was a reason to never try democracy. Lots of racial tensions don't cooperate. I would point you to America and any country with more than one race in the world. Because they just said tensions exist without analysing why these tensions exist. Analysis Kieran gave you, which they never engaged with. One of the reasons that the tensions exist is because they're held in personal bitter feuds by monarchs who impose their particular views of the other race on society. Many of these were things over stupidities like romance, because these leaders have incredibly long lifespans, they maintain this racism, which is why the only elves and dwarves who are racist are the ones who never talk to other elves and dwarves, right? Every time there's been engagement on a person-to-person level, they've ended up being friends. Legolas and Gimli were friends. In The Hobbit, the fucking elf fell in love with the dwarf guy, right? The fact of the matter is that the source of this misunderstanding and racism is just lack of engagement, which is what democracy fixes. Because you put them in the same room and they can hear each other's concerns. You guys said that they don't understand why these things are valuable. Well, perhaps we'll remedy that. It's a forum where they were allowed to speak and explain why they're so valuable. Why would the other races be so sadistic as to reject on principle that things can't be valuable to each other? They can analogize it to their own things. The Ed can say trees are valuable to us like the Arkham is valuable to you, and the elves can say that Mithril is valuable to us like the Arkham is valuable to you. We think that those experiences are species specific and can analogize in a democracy. Then they said they would value fundamentally different things, which is weird, right? Because then why would there be tensions? If they value fundamentally different things, presumably they're not fighting over them. We think that the sorts of things which are commonly valued, things like llama spread, if the elves don't know that llama spread could save a lot of people from hunger, then we fucking need to let them know that, right? Because at the moment, that means by pure negligence they are letting an entire population starve. That is something we won't stand for. Okay, next thing. Furthermore, right? The effectiveness of a democracy is only instrumental, isn't an active harm. It's only an instrumental harm that actually makes the situation worse. Given that the snapshot of the situation at the moment is total inequality, where the races have all the same prejudices you guys said with no path forward, because your end game is let them insulate further, right? Is to say that all of the harms of our defective democracy are existence under your status quo, with no path out, right? Because, and furthermore, under the very hardest characterization, where we do give humans disproportionate favours, we said that humans are probably more deserving of those favours. Why? Because they are numerically larger in numbers and suffering. 2, because they contribute the most to the defence of every race on that thing. Every time a war breaks out, you know who loses the most lives? The humans. You know who fights first? The humans. You know who cities and infrastructure gets destroyed? The humans. So under the very hardest characterization where humans are given more, we think they've earned that. You guys didn't give us any reason as to why the status quo which favours elves and dwarves should be kept. Okay, the next, and it's not coming soon because he's never given us a way forward. Then they ask, what happens when people say no? We don't think that everyone's going to say no. We think that there are some natural alliances, right? Like the elves kind of like the humans at the moment, right? Because like, you know, Aragorn married Arwen, and also the Shire, right? Like the hobbits like the humans. We think that the sort of cultural trades and resource trades and technology trades will become very, very visible, and the countries who said no, when we sanction them from those trade relationships, so they start saying yes, will become envious of these trade relationships because they will bring value. It's valuable to share technologies. It's valuable to share specialist resources. Only some fiefdoms will have access to things like rubber or certain types of food which grow in the winter or don't grow in the summer, and we think that those advantages will become the envy of countries who say no. They will have the incentive to join. They don't under your side of the house. Phil.
I explained to you why a policy of aggressive redistribution, which is what you brought at Hewitt, was going to be rejected on racial grounds by many of these races. Do you honestly think that no race is ever going to object in any fashion?
No, of course they'll object, mate, but like they have to be really sadistic to say, if you just give up your spare llama spread, we can save people's lives. What incentives do the elves have to reject that sort of offer? We said that this also furthermore ignored all of our analysis about the source of those racial tensions being the existing system which favoured monarchy, confined elites. In a democracy, the very foundations of those conflicts start to show away. Firstly, security. They gave us no response onto this. It is in the mutual interest of these races to unite, because let's look at the status quo. The beacons didn't get lit deliberately. They had to be sabotaged to be lit to call Gondor for aid. Like for Rohan for aid. Rohan waited until it was nearly too late to come to their aid. We need constant communications. The fucking org things which they can Skype each other on need to be there now so they can act in a united fashion very, very quickly to stop security threats. Women, also no response. Aelwyn, Aemir got the crown because he's the guy. Aelwyn didn't get the crown because she's a woman, even though she's got more popular support. Under a democratic structure, she is more likely to advance, and those normative effects for other women in the world are going to create a more stable government, a more fair government. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the worst case for us and for our side of the house was literally the status quo they stood for. We were very proud to propose.